Hey and welcome to this jazz guitar technique lesson. When it comes to playing jazz guitar and fretting hand technique, are you using your hand in the best way, the most efficient way, the best way to achieve the best sound, the least tension, to ensure that you don't encounter problems with your hands or aches and pains, but also that you make it easier work for yourself? Today I want to share with you 5 tips to work at this to make sure you're using your hand in the best possible way. Tip number 1 is to play with the minimal or optimum amount of pressure. So that means pushing hard enough, only hard enough for the note to come out and not pushing any harder. If you're pushing too hard, two things can happen. A, you push the note out of tune. So when you play over chords, you're going to sound a little bit out. And the second thing is that you're just working your hand too hard and you're going to be tense. And that's not going to lead to good things in terms of the way your note music sounds, but also you might encounter problems with the hand or the fingers. So you're going to want to be able to do this with any finger. Let's pick fret 8 on the B string, so the note G. Now, if you push too hard, then what you end up doing is you'll push the note out of tune. And so a thing to check whether you're doing that is to get a tuner, play the note, and see if it's a G. Obviously, hopefully your guitar's intonated well, and that does come out as a G. But just check with the tuner, and if it's coming sharp, then and the guitar's definitely in tune, then you're pushing too hard. So what you want to do with all the fingers that you can use to play a note, practice pushing down as lightly as you can. Now actually just push it as far as you can, like so there, it's not coming out, and then when you get to the point where it just starts to ring and it's clear, that's as far as you need to go. You don't need to go any more than that. And if you transition from playing acoustic, you know, you're playing electric or archtop, you're probably working harder than you need to with all of this. Middle finger, nice clear note. Should all sound the same. Often with the little finger we overcompensate because we find it harder, and then we push in harder, and then, you know, it goes out of tune. So you need to make sure these fingers are strong. Doing kind of exercises like, good to do that. You develop the strength in the fingers, and then they don't have to work so hard. Tip number 2, now this isn't about pressure, this is about how you use the first finger, and it's often you might want it on the pad. This is to aid your ability to stretch and to mute surrounding strings. If I'm using my first finger on the guitar, I'm not going to have my first finger upright like that. Well, not say I never would, but more often than not, it's going to be like that on the pad. You see? So on the pad of the finger rather than the tip. So if I play a note, if I play that G again like that, you notice I bring it in a bit of a diagonal as well. What it means is I've got a better stretch with these other fingers. So if I'm like this, I'm limited by how far I can get those fingers, so provides a greater stretch. So one thing to get used to is playing notes like this on the pad of the finger. A good thing to practice is just rolling your finger down a fret like that. What this also does, right, if I go back to that G we had, I put the pad down, the tip of the finger is catching the G, which stops it ringing. So if I happen to hit the G string with my right hand, it's not going to sound. I've also raising, I'm not barring this by the way, I'm not flat on the E string, otherwise I might get 2 notes. What I'm doing is on the pad, and then I raise the finger slightly so I mute this string and the tip of the finger is catching that, so that I could play these 3 strings and only get 1 note. Why is that important? Because sometimes we're not as always accurate with our right hand as we might like. Tip number 3 for me is an essential, and it's wherever possible you get your fingers close to the fret so you can feel the fret. So playing close to the fret. If I'm playing notes on the guitar, if I was playing these 4 notes, you look, I'm right up against the fret. Now sometimes when you've got to put more than one finger down like a tight box, like an A chord, right? You can't get all your fingers close to the fret, it's not physically possible. But if you're just playing single notes, if I was playing, I don't know, look at this, F scale. Really close to the fret. I can feel each fret against my finger. The benefit of that is I know where I am on the guitar. If you play in the middle of the fret, right, if you experiment with this for yourself, but it doesn't sound quite as good. If I play at the back of the fret, notes don't ring clearly. So I want to be there, not on top of the fret, not because the note goes really dull. Just behind it so you can feel the fret against your finger. Again, watch I play that scale. Watch the first finger on the pad as well, applying what we've just done. The little finger plays on the pad a lot here too. Wrist also comes in at a natural angle, so I'm not putting undue pressure on my wrist. So by playing close to the fret, you can feel where you are. You don't need to then look at your hand. And that, frees up your attention just to focus on listening to what you're doing, which is so much more important. My final 2 tips are about muting with the fretting hand. Tip number 4 is to, when you leave a note, when you move to another string or to a chord or whatever, you have to mute that string and stop it vibrating. Muting as you leave a note. If I play that G again, and if I just lift off, we get the sound of the open strings. So what you have to do when you come off a note with any finger, you have to do this. You have to stop it vibrating and then take your finger away gently. So what I'm doing is playing the note. I release the pressure from the fretboard but not the string, which will silence the guitar, and then I lift off gently. I think I caught the E there as well. It's quite hard to do. Try it with another finger. Let's try fret 9, middle finger. I caught it a little bit then. And then. But it's not as bad as like that. You see what I mean? So this is, if I'm playing. Oh, I don't want to hear in between. Tip number 5 is another way to achieve the same things we've just done. And that's to mute the previous string by putting the next note down. So for this last one, let's say I'm playing F on the G string, fret 10, and then I'm going to play G on the B string. So what I can do here, I could do my muting method I just had and go lift off gently like that, right? But another way you can do it is if you put the finger that you put down on the next string, providing the next note is on an adjacent string, so in this case on the B string or the D string, I can get this finger when it goes down to catch the G so it mutes it. Watch. So I play the F on the G string, then I go to G on the B, and the tip of the finger, as we did earlier, is resting against the G so it stops it ringing out. Like that, instead of you hear that came out that time. So that's one way to kill these notes also. These inlays are so cool. What do you think of the 5 tips? Is there anything I've missed? Is there any of those you feel like you need to incorporate into your technique and your practice? With any of these things, if you realize that you need to get these into your playing, then you're going to need to go very slow and deliberate with it, like mega slow. And you're going to have to really consciously think about it until it becomes part of your sort of unconscious and natural way of playing. So, you're going to need to be patient with yourself. You're going to need to remind yourself, maybe having a post-it up if it was like, don't push so hard, or get close to the fret. And a lot of these things, they're done in the long run by feel, like that feeling of the proximity of the fret, your finger against the fret. For me, that's important to be able to play guitar and not be so absorbed in looking at what I'm doing. I know where I am because of that. A lot of those others are just about achieving the best sound, making sure your notes sound good, making sure your notes don't sound tense or out of tune, and that we don't get unwanted sounds of open strings. If you need some sort of work with this also with your chord playing, I'll put a link on the screen to my video on how to mute unwanted strings on chords, because that's always an area of difficulty for people getting used to jazz chords, transitioning from other genres. Let me know what you think of these suggestions. If you've got any tips as well, leave them in the comments. There's no resources obviously from today's lesson, but in the description, check out the link to my Buy Me a Coffee page, and please leave me a comment, hit the like button, and join me for jazz guitar lessons every Wednesday and Saturday. Until next time, you take care.